Okay, here's my audience. Just stand in front of him until he pisses again. Until he moves again. He's staring at me. Hi, I'm Sarah from Get Wild Animal Experiences, and I'm here to share some information with you about koalas. Before I start, I want to talk a little bit about animal welfare. Because we need to make sure that our friend Boris here is not going to be stressed out. So koalas can become stressed by overhandling. So today I'm not going to handle Boris because he's not really used to regular handling. I'm just going to stand here and talk at a reasonably measured volume because we're all close together, because loud noises can also stress them out. Hopefully these measures prevent stress to Boris, but I'd also like to mention some of the key signs that koalas are stressed, as it's important to keep an eye on our friends. Some examples of signs of acute stress include restlessness, hiccups, whining or loud vocalization, alarm posture, which is shown by wide eyes, forward-facing ears, and a straight spine, head shaking, and ear flicking. So we'll keep an eye out for any of those signs, and I'll adjust my volume of speech or my position depending on whether he seems to be stressed out. So as I mentioned, my name's Sarah. I'm from Get Wild Animal Experiences, and today I'm going to share some information about one of my favourite animals and one of Australia's most iconic animals, the koala. Now, koalas are pretty well known around the world and are a key Australian icon. They feature in our food, clothes, currency and media. We have the Blinky Bill TV show, Caramello Koala chocolates, koala-scented books for children, and of course if you walk into any tourist store, you'll see koala-themed bags, clothes, hats and toys. So they're a pretty important animal in Australian culture. However, as they live high up in their eucalyptus trees, we don't often get to see them too often in person, unless we're extremely lucky to catch a glimpse in the bush or visit a wildlife facility. So today I'd like to share some information and interesting koala facts to help you learn a little bit more about this native Australian animal. I'd also like to talk a little bit about some of the struggles that koalas have been facing in the wild and what can be done to help them. I hope you'll walk away from this talk knowing a little bit more about our fuzzy friends and hopefully with a new appreciation for them. So I'll begin to provide an overview of the koala, and then I'll dig a little deeper in detail of what makes this species so unique. Koalas live in eucalyptus forests of south, eastern and eastern Australia. There are three different types of koalas: the grey koalas, found in Queensland, the grey-brown koalas, found in New South Wales, and the brown koalas, found in Victoria. The brown koalas are also known as Victorian koalas or southern koalas because of where they're found. They're the largest species of koala in Australia, with the males growing up to 14 kilograms in weight, and they have thicker fur to help survive in the colder climates of Victoria. The grey koalas are the second most common type of koala in Australia. They're also known as the Queensland koala or northern koala. They have the thinnest and lightest coloured fur of the koala types, and they're the smallest, with the males growing to almost 7 kilograms in weight, half the size of their southern cousins. Once the grey koalas were the most widespread species in Australia, and are the most popular, being used for most koala-related images in literature and the media. However, now they're the most threatened species of koala. In Queensland, more than 80% of grey koala population has been lost over the past 20 years. The grey-brown koalas are the most obscure and are usually lumped together with the brown koalas in media and literature. Koalas are a marsupial, which means that they're a mammal and they have warm blood, so they're not a reptile like a snake or a lizard. It also means that they have a pouch where their young can develop, similar to a kangaroo or a wombat. They're an arboreal species, which means they live in trees. Their fluffy coat, big ears, and arboreal nature are what caused Europeans, when they first arrived, to call them the koala bear. However, they're not a bear at all, and are most closely related to the wombat. The name koala is actually thought to have come from an Aboriginal name for the animal. There are so many different Aboriginal dialects, and a variety of names for the koala, but several sound very similar to the name we use now. Koala is thought to have meant no drink. They drink very little water, as most of their fluid comes from the leaves they eat. Eucalyptus leaves contain 55% water, so koalas will only be seen drinking water on the ground in extreme temperatures. However, they do lap up water that runs down trees when it rains. Koalas are what's called a folivore, which means they eat leaves. They're also specialist feeders. They have a very particular diet which consists solely of eucalyptus leaves. And in fact, this is a very special diet because eucalyptus leaves are extremely poisonous to most other animals. Koalas, possums, and greater gliders are the only mammals who can actually survive on them, having developed special digestive systems that can cope with the toxins in the leaves. However, the leaves take a lot of energy to digest. They're also very low in nutrition. This means that they need to eat a lot of leaves to get the energy they need to survive, between 200 to 500 grams of leaf per day. It can take up to 20 healthy trees to sustain one adult koala, so when they're awake, they spend all of their time eating. There's a common misconception that koalas are lazy, sleepy creatures that get drunk on the eucalyptus leaves that they eat. However, the truth is that it takes so much energy to digest their food that they don't have any energy left for other activities. Koalas are nocturnal animals, which means they're most active during the night. So when we see them, usually in the daytime, this is during their resting period. Now, as I've mentioned, because they have such a special diet, they need to take a lot of time to digest their food. And so their resting period is exceptionally long. They sleep between 18 and 22 hours a day. That said, when they're active, they can actually move quite quickly when needed, and display impressive agility. As I mentioned, they're arboreal, but when they do descend to the ground, they can break into a gallop of up to 30 kilometers per hour, which works out to be about 8 meters per second, which isn't too bad for an animal that a lot of people consider to be slow and lazy. However, this is only really if they're threatened by a predator or scared into fleeing. They're not designed to move on the ground and would normally move slowly if they're not in a rush. To help them move amongst the trees, koalas have very strong arms, which are purpose-built for holding onto trees and branches. Their hands and feet feature thick, hook-shaped claws, similar to those of the dog, but sharper so they can latch onto trees. They have 5 digits on each paw, but unlike us, they have 2 opposable thumbs on their forepaws, similar to possums, which gives them a much better grip on the branches and allows them to move amongst trees easily. They also have textured pads on the undersides of their paws, which help to increase grip. When they need to move to a nearby tree, they can leap up to 1.5 meters across to another branch. They have a special groove in their rump that allows them to balance more easily when sitting on a branch. And of course, they even sleep up in the trees, although they usually have an arm ready to grab onto a branch should the wind pick up suddenly. Another interesting adaptation that helps the koala live in our sometimes harsh climate is its coat. These coats are insulated, which helps with the regulation of heat, and in winter the density of the coat helps to compensate for the koala's lack of fat storage. The colour of the coat also helps in heat regulation, so they have a lighter coat at the front, so in summer when they spread out, they can cool down by repelling the heat with that lighter colour, and they have a darker coat on their rear side, so in winter it helps to attract heat when they curl up into a ball. Their hands and feet also have sweat glands, which also assist in cooling them down, and because they have such a sedentary lifestyle, they're able to conserve water very well. Now, as I mentioned, they exist on a diet of eucalyptus leaves, which has a cool side effect. They have their own natural insect repellent. Because they eat such an enormous quantity of these leaves, they actually smell a bit like a cough lily. They have a very strong eucalyptus smell, which not only acts as an insect repellent, but it's also used to identify them. Males especially have a potent smell, as they have scent glands on their chests, which they use to rub on trees, as it excretes an oil which is unique to each individual. When they rub their chest on trees, they leave a scent, which is used to mark their territory or attract mates. Now we've learned a few things about koalas and how they survive in the Australian environment. I'd like to also mention some of the struggles that koalas have been facing in the more recent past. There are a number of threats to koalas, which include predators, disease, and of course bushfires, which have decimated koala habitat over the years. Another big threat to koala habitat is deforestation and urbanisation, which have massively reduced the habitat and food resources available to the koala colonies since European settlement. As human populations have expanded and we have needed resources, such as land and timber to grow and prosper, we've destroyed and reduced the habitat that koalas need to survive. Koalas are like a lot of other species, including humans, in the way that they use their territory. As people, when we reach adulthood, we usually move out of home, so that we can find another place where we can make a home, access food, and maybe grow our own family. When we destroy koala habitat, young koalas that reach adulthood aren't able to move to a new territory. Maybe that habitat is fragmented, so now there's a road between their parents' territory and the great expanse of eucalypt forest where they could make a new home. Or in some cases, the forest is just gone. Since European settlement, approximately 80% of Australia's eucalyptus forests have been cleared. Even if there is an area that they can access, this could already be home to very territorial koalas that don't want to share and will defend it. All of this searching for a home also puts them at risk because they're spending increased time on the ground, where they can be attacked by predators such as dingoes, large owls, eagles, pythons and dogs, or be hit by cars when they try and cross the road. The stress of deforestation and the search for new territory of increasingly urban areas also increases their susceptibility to disease, as it's incredibly stressful and disorienting for the koalas. There are so many new noises, smells and sights that can be overwhelming for an animal that is used to a quiet forest. One option we have to help koalas is to plant trees. If landowners around koala habitat plant eucalyptus trees to grow and especially to connect koala habitat, the prospects for this species are greatly improved. The eucalypt species planted must be local species to ensure that they thrive and are of maximum benefit to the koala. Koalas primarily feed from 1 or 2 eucalyptus species in their area and use other eucalyptus species as occasional food sources and some non-eucalyptus species as housing. Even if there are a variety of eucalyptus species that are known to be used by koalas accessible in an area, at least 1 or 2 of the koala's preferred species must be present to give the koala colony the best chance of survival. Yes, you have a question?
So are you saying that they don't eat all species of eucalyptus?
No, so each koala would usually like 1 or 2 species that are in their local area. As koalas are widespread up and down the east coast, there's a wide variety of eucalyptus species that are enjoyed by the koalas depending on their area.
Cool.
Thank you for your question. Additionally, as I mentioned earlier, one koala would need a minimum of around 20 healthy trees to support its food requirements. If the trees are of poor quality or of small size, this number could increase. 20 trees for one koala seems like a lot, but eucalyptus trees are their only source of food, and they're very selective about the leaves they eat. Besides that, once they eat the leaves off a tree, they need to wait for them to regrow, so there need to be a variety of trees in their habitat to support their needs. This is why it's so important to begin planting trees as soon as possible, to give them time to grow big enough to sustain the koala population in an area. The Australian Koala Foundation has developed a national koala tree planting list, with key species listed by location in Australia, as well as information on koala biology and ecology, and other advice relating to planting and growing trees. This makes it much easier for people who'd like to rebuild koala habitat in their local area to find the particular trees in the area that koalas prefer. There are various other organisations that support the regeneration of native bushland in order to rebuild koala habitats by working with landowners and government to implement strategies that support the regeneration and protection of koala habitat, as well as the rescue, rehabilitation and release of injured or displaced koalas. Today I've been lucky to share some information on koalas with you all, including their habitat, diet, physical characteristics, and we briefly talked about some of their challenges, and the need to prioritise the regeneration of the habitat in order to support current and future koala colonies. There's so much more information available in addition to what I've had time to discuss with you today. I've provided you with some handouts that you're welcome to take home, and there are some links for further information that is available online if you're interested in checking it out. I hope that I've sparked an interest and appreciation for this key native Australian icon, and that you have enjoyed learning about the koala today. Thank you for listening to my talk, and have a great day. Yay, thank you. Okay, does anyone have any questions?
I have a
Nathan,
question.
what's your question?
I was just wondering, with the 2019 to 2020 bushfires, do you think that'll have long-term impacts on koala populations?
Yeah, well, I think that, I don't really know the numbers of how many koalas died or were injured in those bushfires. I know there was quite a lot of land burnt. So obviously all of those trees will need to regenerate, and the koala populations will have to build back up again. So it will have reduced the population of koalas up and down the coast quite a bit. So therefore, in the future, there'll be less koalas than what there otherwise would have been. But hopefully we can all work together to give them the best chance in the future. Okay. So just now we've completed our talk, I'm just going to have a quick look again at Boris and just make sure that he hasn't been stressed out. We've been monitoring him during the talk and he seems to be quite calm. He looks like he is about to go to sleep. So I think we have a reasonably content koala. Okay. Thank you for listening to me.